What if I told you that the dirtiest, most ignored beggar on the streets of Lagos owns more wealth than everyone who walks past him combined? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change how you see every single person you meet. But before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because stories like this one, stories that challenge everything you think you know about life, these are what we bring to you every single week. Now, picture this. Lekki Phase 1. The kind of neighborhood where Range Rovers and G-Wagons sit in traffic like they're competing for a beauty pageant, where the restaurants charge more for a plate of jollof than most people earn in a week, where security guards at every gate wear sharper uniform than bank managers. This is where money doesn't just talk, it screams. And in the middle of all this wealth, there was a plaza. Not just any plaza. The kind of plaza that had a ShopRite, a cinema, designer boutiques, a rooftop lounge, and restaurants where people spent 50,000 naira on brunch like it was nothing. Every day, thousands of people walked through that plaza. Housewives with Brazilian hair and designer handbags. Young men in crisp shirts carrying MacBooks. Teenagers with the latest iPhones, taking selfies for Instagram. Everyone had somewhere to be, something to buy, someone to impress. But there was one person nobody noticed. An old man, bent over like the weight of the world was sitting on his shoulders. His clothes were torn and faded, stained with dirt and time. His feet were bare, cracked and dusty. His hair was wild and matted, and his beard looked like it hadn't seen a razor in years. Every single day, he sat at the entrance of the plaza with a small bowl in front of him, begging for change. And every single day, people ignored him. They walked past him like he was invisible. Some wrinkled their noses in disgust. Others clutched their bags tighter, like poverty was contagious. A few dropped coins into his bowl without even looking at him, just to feel good about themselves. But most people acted like he didn't exist. To them, he was just another beggar, another reminder of the Lagos they tried to pretend wasn't there. But here's the question you need to ask yourself. What if the person everyone ignores, the person society has written off as worthless, what if that person holds the key to everything you've been searching for? What if kindness, real kindness, the kind that costs you something, what if that's the only currency that truly matters? Now, let me introduce you to Chidi. 16 years old, skinny as a broomstick, with clothes that had seen better days and shoes held together by sheer willpower and prayer. Chidi wasn't from Lekki. He wasn't even from Lagos originally. He was from a small village in Enugu State, a place where the biggest excitement was when NEPA brought light for more than 3 hours. His father died when he was 12. His mother tried her best, but best wasn't enough when the rains didn't come and the crops didn't grow. So Chidi did what thousands of Nigerian boys do every year. He came to Lagos, the city of dreams, the city of opportunities, the city that chews people up and spits them out before they even realize what hit them. For 4 years, Chidi hustled. He sold water in traffic under the scorching sun. He hawked plantain chips on the streets of Surulere. He washed cars at petrol stations for 100 naira per car. He did whatever it took to survive, sending every spare naira back home to his mother and 2 younger sisters. For years of grinding, scraping, surviving. For years of going to bed, hungry more nights than not. For years of watching people in fancy cars live the kind of life he couldn't even dream about anymore. This particular day started like every other day. Chidi woke up at 5 in the morning in the cramped boys' quarters he shared with 7 other hustlers in Aja. No food in his stomach. No money in his pocket. Well, that's not entirely true. He had exactly 500 naira. His last 500 naira. The money he'd saved from washing cars the day before. That 500 naira was supposed to buy him food for the next 2 days until he could hustle again. Rice and stew from Mama Ngozi's buka. Maybe some bread, an egg, something, anything, to silence the angry growling in his stomach. But Chidi had a plan. There was a man in Lekki, someone who knew someone who knew someone, who was hiring young men to work as delivery riders. The pay was good, steady, reliable. It was the kind of opportunity that could change everything. Therefore, Chidi took his last 500 naira, boarded a Danfo from Aja, and headed to Lekki, praying that this would be the day his life finally turned around. The interview was at 2 in the afternoon. But Chidi got there early, around 11. He wanted to make a good impression. So he walked around the plaza, killing time, watching the world of the wealthy unfold before his eyes. People carried shopping bags from stores he'd never be able to afford. They sipped smoothies that cost more than his daily income. They laughed and took photos, and lived in a Lagos that felt like a different planet from his own. And that's when Chidi saw him, the old beggar, sitting at the entrance, hunched over his bowl, ignored by everyone. Chidi walked past him once, then twice, but something made him stop. Maybe it was the way the old man's hands trembled. Maybe it was the hollow look in his eyes. Maybe it was because Chidi knew, truly knew, what it felt like to be hungry, to be invisible, to be forgotten. Whatever it was, Chidi couldn't just walk away. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the old man. Then he looked at the 500 naira note in his hand. His last 500 naira. His food money. His survival money. And this is the moment you need to pay attention to, because this is where everything changes. Most people would have walked away. Most people would have said, "I'm hungry too. I need this money. Sorry, old man, but I have my own problems." And honestly, no one would have blamed them. Chidi was broke. He was hungry. He had every reason to hold on to that money. But Chidi didn't walk away. Instead, he bent down and placed the entire 500 naira note into the old man's bowl. Not 50 naira, not 100, the whole thing. His last 500 naira. The old man looked up, surprise flickering across his weathered face. "God bless you, my son," he whispered, his voice rough and tired. Chidi just nodded, smiled a little, and walked away, his stomach still empty, but his heart somehow feeling lighter. Now here's where you need to ask yourself something. Have you ever given something when it actually cost you something? Not the spare change in your pocket. Not the money you wouldn't miss anyway. But the last thing you had? The thing you needed. Because that's real kindness. That's sacrifice. And that's exactly what Chidi did. The interview didn't go well. The man took one look at Chidi, skinny and desperate and clearly broke, and told him position had been filled. Chidi suspected the man was lying, but what could he do? So he left. No job, no money, no food, just the clothes on his back and a long walk ahead of him, because he couldn't even afford the damn full fare back to Aja. Therefore, Chidi started walking, past the plaza, past the gleaming cars, past a world that would never be his. His stomach was growling, so loud it felt like it was echoing in his chest. His legs were weak. His head was spinning, but he kept walking. And then something happened. Behind him, he heard a voice. Young man, wait." Chidi turned around. It was the old beggar. But he wasn't sitting anymore. He was standing. And somehow, he didn't look quite so old anymore. He was walking toward Chidi, and there was something different about him. Something in the way he moved. Something in his eyes. "Thank you for your kindness," the old man said. "Not many people would have done what you did." Chidi shrugged, embarrassed. "It's nothing, sir. You looked hungry. I know what that feels like." The old man smiled. "What's your name?" "Chidi, sir." "Chidi? And what were you doing here in Lekki?" So Chidi told him about the interview, about his hustling, about his mother and sisters back in the village, about trying to survive in Lagos, about everything. And the old man listened, really listened, not the way most people listen, waiting for their turn to talk, but the way someone listens when they actually care. When Chidi finished, the old man nodded slowly. Then he said something that made Chidi's heart skip. "What if I told you that kindness is never wasted? What if I told you that the universe rewards those who give when they have nothing left to give?" Chidi didn't know what to say to that. Therefore, he just stood there confused, waiting. The old man reached into his torn pocket and pulled out a card, a business card. Clean, expensive looking, completely out of place in the hands of a beggar. He handed it to Chidi. "Come to this address tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock sharp. Ask for Mr. Okonkwo." Chidi looked at the card. His eyes went wide. The address was for the plaza. The big plaza. and the name on the card was Chief Emmanuel Okonkwo. Chief, not Mr. Chief. Sir, I don't understand, Chidi stammered. The old man smiled, and this time it wasn't the tired, broken smile of a beggar. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. You will, he said. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock. Don't be late. And then, before Chidi could ask any more questions, the old man turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd like he was never there. Chidi stood there, holding the card, his mind racing. What just happened? Who was that old man? And why did a beggar have a business card with the name of a chief on it? That night, Chidi couldn't sleep. He kept looking at the card, turning it over in his hands, trying to make sense of it. Part of him thought it was a prank. Maybe someone was going to embarrass him. Maybe it was all a joke. But another part of him, the part that had given away his last 500 naira, the part that still believed in something bigger than survival, that part told him to go. Therefore, the next morning, Chidi woke up early. He washed his face with water from a bucket. He wore his cleanest shirt, even though it was faded and had a small tear near the collar. He borrowed 20 naira from his roommate for transport, and he went to the plaza. 9 o'clock sharp. He stood at the entrance, holding the business card like it was a golden ticket. He showed it to the security guard, who looked at him with suspicion. You're here to see Chief Okonkwo? The guard asked, his tone making it clear he didn't believe a boy like Chidi had any business with someone like a chief. Yes, sir, Chidi said, trying to sound confident. The guard took the card, examined it, then made a phone call. His expression changed immediately, from suspicion to shock to something close to respect. Follow me, the guard said, and his entire tone had changed. Chidi followed him to the plaza, past the shops and restaurants, past the people who still didn't notice him, and into a private elevator. They went up past the shops, up past the cinema, all the way to the top floor, the penthouse level, a level Chidi didn't even know existed. The elevator doors opened, and Chidi stepped into the most beautiful office he had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking all of Lekki. Furniture that looked like it cost more than his entire life. Art on the walls. A massive desk made of dark wood. And sitting behind that desk was the old beggar. Except he wasn't a beggar anymore. He was wearing an immaculate white igbada. His hair was neat. His beard was trimmed. He looked like royalty. He looked like power. He looked like wealth. Good morning, Chidi, Chief Emmanuel Okonkwo said, smiling. Please sit down. Chidi sat, his mouth hanging open, unable to speak. Chief Okonkwo laughed. I can see you're confused. Let me explain. This plaza? I own it. Every shop, every restaurant, every square foot. I built it 30 years ago. I'm worth more money than you can probably imagine. But here's the thing, Chidi. Money doesn't tell you who a person really is. Wealth can't show you someone's heart. Therefore, every few months, I disguise myself as a beggar, and I sit at the entrance of my own plaza. I watch. I observe. I see how people treat someone they think is worthless. And in all these years, and all the thousands of people who've walked past me, do you know how many have given me their last money? How many have truly sacrificed for a stranger? Chidi shook his head, unable to speak. 7. Chief Okonkwo said quietly, in 20 years of doing this, only 7 people have given me their last money. And you, Chidi, you are the 7th. He stood up and walked around the desk. You gave me your last 500 naira. Money you needed. Money you were hungry for. You didn't give me your spare change. You gave me your survival. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. Chief Okonkwo placed a hand on Chidi's shoulder. I don't need employees, Chidi. I need people with character. People with heart. People who understand that kindness is the most valuable currency in the world. Therefore, I'm offering you a job. Not as a delivery rider. As my personal assistant. I will train you. I will mentor you. I will teach you everything I know about business. I will pay you a salary that will take care of you and your mother and your sisters. And if you prove yourself, if you continue to show the character you showed yesterday, I will make you one of my managers. Chidi couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. Tears were streaming down his face. Sir, I don't know what to say, he whispered. Say yes, Chief Okonkwo said, smiling. Say yes, and let's get to work. And Chidi said yes. Of course he said yes. That day changed everything. Chief Okonkwo didn't just give Chidi a job. He gave him an education. He taught him about business, about investments, about real estate, about how to build wealth that lasts. He sent him to school. He introduced him to powerful people. He became the father Chidi had lost. And Chidi? Chidi worked harder than he'd ever worked in his life. Not because he had to, but because he was grateful. Because he understood that kindness had saved him. Because he wanted to prove that Chief Okonkwo's faith in him wasn't misplaced. 5 years later, Chidi was managing 3 of Chief Okonkwo's properties. He'd bought a house for his mother in the village. He'd sent his sisters to university. He was building his own wealth, learning, growing, becoming the kind of man who could change lives the way his life had been changed. But here's what Chidi never forgot. Every month, on the same day, he would dress in old clothes, sit at the entrance of the plaza, and do exactly what Chief Okonkwo had done. He would watch, he would observe, and he would wait to see who would show kindness to someone who seemed to have nothing. Because Chidi understood something that most people never learn. Kindness isn't about giving when it's convenient. It's not about charity when you have plenty. Real kindness is about giving when it costs you something. It's about seeing humanity in people's society as made invisible. It's about understanding that every single person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Therefore, the question isn't whether you can afford to be kind. The question is, can you afford not to be? So let me ask you something. When was the last time you really saw someone? Not just looked at them, but saw them? When was the last time you gave something that actually mattered? When was the last time you chose kindness when it wasn't easy? Because here's the truth that most people spend their whole lives learning the hard way. The universe is always watching, not in some mystical, magical way, but in the real, practical way that your character determines your destiny. The way you treat people when they can do nothing for you reveals everything about who you really are. And somehow, someway, that always comes back around. Chidi gave his last 500 naira to a beggar. That beggar turned out to be a billionaire who changed his entire life. But here's what you need to understand. Even if that old man had just been a beggar, even if there had been no reward, no job, no mentorship, Chidi's kindness still would have mattered. Because kindness is never wasted. Every act of genuine compassion sends ripples through the world in ways you can't predict. Every moment you choose to see someone, really see them, you change something. Maybe you change their day. Maybe you change their life. Maybe you change yourself. The wealthy people who walked past that beggar every single day, they had more money than Chidi could dream of, but they didn't have what Chidi had. They didn't have the ability to see past appearances. They didn't have the courage to give when it hurt. They didn't have the kind of character that Chief Okonkwo was looking for. Therefore, they stayed exactly where they were, rich in money, but poor in the things that truly matter. And Chidi, broke and hungry and desperate, became rich in every way that counts. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you see someone everyone else ignores, stop, look at them. Really look at them. See them as a human being with a story, with struggles, with dignity. And if you have anything to give it. Not because you expect a reward. Not because you want to feel good about yourself. But because kindness is the only thing that separates us from the cold, brutal indifference of the world. You never know who's watching. You never know whose life you might change. And you certainly never know when the person you're helping might turn out to be the answer to prayers you didn't even know you were praying. Because in Lagos, in Nigeria, in this world we're all trying to survive in, the only thing that truly matters is how we treat each other when no one's keeping score. Chidi's last 500 naira bought him a future, not because the universe is magical, but because character is destiny. Because kindness opens doors that money never could. Because the way you treat the least among us reveals everything about who you are. And in the end, that's all that really matters. If the story touched you, if it made you think, if it challenged you even a little bit, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now, because we need more stories like this. Stories that remind us what it means to be human. Stories that challenge us to be better. Stories that prove kindness is never, ever wasted. Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And let's build a community of people who choose to see, to care, and to give, even when it costs us everything. Because that's how we change the world. One act of kindness at a time. One last 500 naira at a time. One person at a time. Thank you for watching. And remember, kindness is never wasted.